Alright, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Abina. Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm here with Nazish and Anam, and today we're going to be talking about a specific form of shirk called riyat, which is basically showing off, and they can explain a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so I think it's important to, for those of you who may not know what in Islam shirk means, it's basically forms of sins, right? So obviously there's many different forms of sins, but more specifically, like you said, Amina, today we're going to be talking about riyah. And riyah is a form of showing off or having impure intentions when completing or doing a deed, or basically doing it for the sake of others instead of maybe, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in general, whatever the actual intention of that deed is.
Yeah, so doing it for praise, like other people's
Yeah.
validations, worldly gain.
Yeah, so self-validation, like you said, worldly gains. It's very much kind of, I also see it as kind of like well, we'll get into that, but like the dunya over deen instead of deen over dunya kind of mentality. But I want to ask you guys, how common do you think this form of shirk, so the riyah, and kind of like what we just talked about, how common do you think it's become in our society today?
Extremely common, but it's also gotten to the point where people are starting to call it out because now you see people videotaping anytime they what is it called? Do it like an act
A
of
good deed,
charity
right?
of
Yeah.
some kind. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised when it's like non-Muslim people, but when I see Muslims doing it, it's kind of uncomfortable because I remember learning growing up, they said that when you're giving charity or doing a good deed, it should be so secretive that your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is doing. And so that's kind of how I always try to do. I took it really literally when I was a kid because I have ADHD. And I would literally wait until there was nobody around if I was
Yeah.
trying to like put something in the donation box or like help somebody out or whatever. And that's kind of just like how I brought myself up, but I feel like that's not as common anymore.
Yeah, no, definitely, like you said, Amina. And my biggest thing when when we were talking about this topic and just kind of brainstorming what we want to talk about immediately, I thought about social media, right? We are in the age and time of social media, so that makes it very more easy for people to um, commit
Indulge in
this,
it, yeah.
yeah, commit the sin, right? Because where does that boundary kind of get lost where your intentions are pure and you're doing it for the sake of the pure intentions, or again the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever your deeds are, you're donating, you're doing this, you're like whatever it is, are we now actually doing it for the sake of the pure intention, or are we doing it because it's a trend now, because you see your friends donating to this charity, or because it's the cool thing to do, or you want to bandwagon and support this, thing going on in the world right now, and you're doing it because, you might get called out by a friend if they see you not posting about it. Like very specific examples, but that's kind of what I always think of is, again, because of social media and so easily accessible to record things and document things, are we doing it because our intentions are there, or are we doing it because we want millions of likes or follows, or we want to get praised in our DMs, or we want more followers? Like, we have to ask ourselves these questions.
I feel like with social media, you don't even realize that you're doing something like that. Like you
Oh,
don't even
yeah.
realize that, like, hey, like this is a sin that I'm committing.
Yeah.
Even when you know that it's for the sake of, getting this praise from other people, like you want them to respond to your story, you want them to say something good about what you just did, you want that
Yeah.
validation from them. And I feel like it's so common. I know you said that it's being called out now, but I still feel like people don't even realize what they're doing. And that's the point that it's gone into.
Yeah. And I also want to kind of say the other side, because I'm not saying that everyone who posts on social media, or everyone who's, sharing on their story, like to donate, or look, I donated and you should donate too, or whatever it is. I'm not saying everyone is purposely trying to get self-validation or doing it for
Not
others.
self-validation, like
So yeah, not
outside validation, yeah.
exact. Or I'm sorry, outside validation. I'm not saying that everyone's trying to do that, but because of social media and this whole ideal of posting about it and not doing it secretly, or more so like a personal thing.
Discreetly. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a better word. Discreetly. It's very easy to kind of label it as you're doing it not for the purest of intentions.
Yeah. Have you guys
So
heard that song by Native Dean? It's literally called Intentions.
no.
No, I
Oh, okay.
haven't.
Well, you guys know Native Dean, right?
Yeah.
The group.
Yeah, yeah.
They used to come to MCC all the
Yeah.
time when I was a kid, and they had this one song called Intentions, and I'm not gonna sing it right now, but You guys should go listen to it. It's a great song. And it actually basically is all about Riyat, which this whole idea of showing off, I didn't know it was a form of shirk, but I also knew that it was something that was discouraged in Islam. And so in the song, they kind of just like go on, are my intentions pure? Am I doing this for Allah, or am I doing this for the people around me?
Exactly.
To basically just like boost your own ego. And I think that's like the major difference of like what makes it a form of shirk and what makes it
A genuine good
like
deed.
a deed for the sake of Allah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of the point that the song asks, is like, am I doing it for Allah? And I don't know, man, a lot of the times that song plays in my head, like it was playing in my head when this topic came up, and
Yeah.
so that was part of the reason that I wanted to join, because I was like, I didn't realize that's exactly what this is. So yeah, I found it really interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I know we kind of talked about, I mean, I talked about social media. Although this form of sin can be seen in obviously many different places, right? And I'm just curious, where else have you guys seen this, or forms of this whole like impure intentions, and the whole like not doing it for the, like all of that kind of stuff? Where else do you see it play out more?
I think for me, this is so crazy, but I don't know about you guys, but when you go to like those big dawats with like a bunch of people and whatever, you're always surrounded, like, you know, like the aunties and uncles and all these kids and whatever, just everyone all in one place. It kind of gets to like that time, you know, at the end where everyone just like sits around, talks, and there's always like that one uncle or one auntie or one kid or whatever that just has to make it a big deal about like who they are, like, oh, I pray like this. I pray 5 times a day. Like I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Like, what are you doing? You guys should be teaching your kids. Like, look at my kids. They do all of that. Why aren't your kids doing that? And then honestly, I see it from their kids too. Like their kids will be like, oh yeah, like how can you act like that? Like how can you do that? Why are you not praying? Why are you going here and there and doing, you know, just like little things.
Judgmental.
And what?
They're being judgmental.
And that's the biggest that's the biggest situation that I've seen it happen in. And it's just, I don't know. I thought it was
Yeah.
so messed up, because you see that growing up, you know, it happens constantly.
Yeah.
Like you go to these dawats all the time, and that's
Yeah.
literally always what happens.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I don't know if, and maybe this is not the right word, but I kind of feel very like, it almost leaves like an icky spot with me when like people really, I mean, okay, again, there's a very distinction between like motivating someone or maybe being that
But you're
person for them.
boasting about yourself,
Exactly.
you know? Like, look at
Exactly.
me, like, I
Yeah.
do so much better than you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I
like
hate that.
there's a difference between
Yeah.
motivating someone or guiding them to the right path, like, hey, like this is how you pray, or this is, you know, you don't wait, like, etc. But then there's like what you're sharing about
Yeah.
like uncles and aunties and even kids our age, kids younger than us,
Yeah.
people older than us, adults, whoever, that they are boasting about this, like kind of being like, haha, I'm doing this, or
Like,
I'm
I'm
doing
better
that.
than you. Like, I'm a better
Yeah.
Muslim than you, or like, I do these things so much better than you. It makes you a
Yeah.
bad person. I'm a good person. You're a bad person.
Yeah, and when in reality, things like this should not be, it's not a competition. It's not something that you should feel like entitled to because you do it. Because again, that leads to that like egotistical, like just that, like this whole self-centered, again, impure intentions,
Arrogant.
you know, having outside validation. It just stems from that.
Yeah, and honestly, what I've learned, my life experience, is that the best way to motivate somebody is through your actions. Like I had these two, I don't want to say, yeah, no, they were very religious. You know, they prayed all of their salah on time. They read Quran very oftenly, and so I found myself, like, especially as a teenager, wanting to be more like them.
Yeah.
And so that was a kind of motivation that kind of, I don't know, made me want to like connect more with my deen, rather than being told that I was like not doing as much as I could be doing or whatever. Like basically not being judged about what I was doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this whole idea of motivating someone versus just boasting or just like, you know, being arrogant.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference, because even if they're you do want to like, I don't want to say compete, but even if you do want to like, try to have like the most good deeds or the most, you know, not, I don't want to say most piety because that's a oxymoron, but like you're supposed to keep that, that kind of thing within
yourself,
It's supposed
yeah.
to be something that you just like keep to yourself and being like, oh well,
It kind
I
of just
want to-
shows
yeah.
naturally without like, you know, forcing it. Because like
Yeah.
I've noticed it, like when they say in front of all these people, like they expect everyone to be like, oh my God, mashallah, like wow, like I wish I could be like you. I wish I could do that. I wish my kids were like that.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. They want you to say
Yeah.
these type of things.
Yeah,
That
again,
doesn't- That
validation.
doesn't mean anything, though.
Yeah. I mean, to them it
Exactly.
does. It's very
Yeah.
temporary, but
Yeah.
to them it means something.
And if that means a lot to you in general, if other people's getting praised from other people and hearing validation from other people or other things mean more to you than keeping it between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I think you kind of need to check yourself. Like you need to
Yeah.
have an honest conversation with yourself and be like, if whenever I'm donating, when I'm, like whatever action you're doing, you got to ask yourself, like, am I doing this because I want X, Y, and Z, or is it because my true intentions, my pure intentions are there? And that could be a hard conversation to ask yourself, because there might be a lot of us who have been doing this since we were very young and not aware that this, again, is a form of sin.
it does.
Or,
It like because you want to hear like, you know, that sort
Yeah.
of praise from other people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's normal. We're human,
of
but
course. And there's not always a bad thing from that, but when it comes to this specifically, there is a discrete, like,
it kind of cancels out your good deed.
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's,
It absolutely does.
it does, yeah. So you think you're like over here donating or doing this and doing that, and yes, you are doing a good deed, but if your intention is because you want to show off to everyone that you're doing this, that good deed that you're doing, it doesn't even count. And that's not something we're making up right now. That is actually said, that your good deed does not get counted if your intention is not pure. So, and I think that's a huge eye opener. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if you think about that, like, okay, you're going out of your way to do all these good deeds, but then you're also kind of on the flip side doing something to cancel out that good deed, like that's kind of like,
Like, what's the point?
yeah.
I mean,
it's
but
kind of an
then
eye
it
opener
just
for
shows
me.
that like you're not, like you really don't care. Like this whole like validation from other people, hearing
Yeah.
like this praise and all of that, it's a very temporary feeling. And when you do get that praise, you know, that's something that needs to be fed constantly. You're gonna need to constantly hear like from these people, like, wow, mashallah, you're doing great. You want to keep hearing these things, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the deed is. You're gonna keep needing to hear that validation from them, and it's a cycle. You're just gonna get stuck in it.
Exactly. And I said this earlier, and this is what I meant by that this dunya is for only so long, right? So people hearing these comments from people and hearing this validation will only take you so far, right? And again, this is, I mean, Deen over dunya can go in many different aspects. We're obviously specifically talking about this, right? But again, at the end of the day, like, it's not going to matter, right? All these praises, these forms of validations, this showing off, and, you know, trying to, all of this stuff, it only takes you so far. You know, again, I think we're all guilty of it. This is kind of one of those sins that we may not realize because has become so, I don't want to say common, but it's
No, it's pretty common.
common. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was gonna be like, I think it's common, but it's definitely hard to kind of catch yourself. So I want to segue by asking, how can you avoid this? How can we avoid, or maybe even, like I said, check ourselves from, you know, committing this sin?
You have to think inward before you do something, especially, you're like, are you looking forward to hearing other people's like commentary on your actions, or are you thinking about how you're going to please Allah? Because that's kind of the only time where you should be thinking, like, wanting validation. His is the only validation we should want. Otherwise, it's not worth it, not necessary, and you know, yeah, basically.
No, definitely, I agree.
I think I don't want to call this like type of, you know, this action like you're a people pleaser, because that can be mistaken into it. But when you're constantly seeking that validation from people, when you constantly need to hear it, like how is it, like how easy can it, or how hard can it be to just flip it instantly? I feel like over time, this is what I was taught like in Sunday school. I remember having this conversation, but our teacher was telling us, like, you know, like, for example, your mom tells you to go take out the trash, and, you know, there are guests over, like, are you doing it because you want these people to hear, like, oh my God, wow, mashallah, like, your son, your daughter is, like, so great, they do all of that for you. But it could really just be as simple as changing that intention in your head. Like, just flip it. It's really that simple. Like, just tell yourself, I'm doing this because I want to help my mom, like, this is something that she needs, this is something that will give me good deeds, this is something that will make me look better in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's really that simple. And I feel like if you keep that mindset, if you're constantly just, like, when you catch yourself doing something like that, I know it's hard because you have to be
Yeah.
very self-aware, But when you do catch yourself doing that,
Yeah.
I think it's just easy enough. Just literally just flip that. Just flip the intention, change it up to something that not only makes you look good in front of people, yeah, like sure they'll think you look great. That's great, you do you, but in front of Allah too, like he'll see it. This is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for, he's doing it for me. Like Allah will be thinking that this my slave is doing it for me.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I really like how you kind of explained that too, because it's true. And, I'm glad that you validated that this isn't something, like, we're making it
Yeah.
sound a lot
Yeah.
easier than, because it's a lot about, like, the thought reframing and kind of, again, being self-aware. And not everyone has that automatic, like, self-awareness. But it is something that comes easier as you practice it. For me, if I were, if I'm kind of giving this like advice, I guess, but for me, kind of what I said earlier about reminding myself what are the consequences of committing this sin. Because again, when I think about
And like what are they? Like if you just like what are they?
So yeah, like I mean, I was saying the biggest one for me is the fact that my good deeds will not be counted. I think that's huge, right? If we go about our day to do these things, and at the end of the day we want these good deeds, but we're over here having not the best intentions, and we're doing this show off or gain like worldly desires, or trying to get someone to notice us because we did this, or because we're trying to get a certain amount of followers because we donated this money, etc., right? There's so many different things. The good deeds I'm doing, like, what's the point? Now that got wasted, and then there's only, again, so for however long that these praises and compliments and things will last.
Like one isn't enough. You're gonna need more.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is kind of like this thing that just keeps on going. So for me, reminding myself, like, what are the consequences of you committing the sin? What's going to happen? Like it kind of like makes me like, oh, like I can't
Like,
do
that's
this.
messed
Like this
up.
is
Yeah, like-
not right. And then again, it helps me check myself. Like, okay, and if you're going to be doing this, is it because your intentions are pure, or is it because you want people to compliment
Praise you,
you
yeah.
or praise me, right? And I think what you said, Nazish, too. I really like that, because I think again it's a huge like being self-aware and reminding ourselves like at the end of the day this doesn't matter. Our main and primary focus is to please Allah, and that's where it should end. But I mean, what about you, Amina? Where do you stand with that too?
I'm so sorry. I kind of zoned out.
No,
a
it's
little
okay.
bit. But
Just like how to refrain.
Yeah, how
what
do we
you-
catch
what do you-
ourselves? with
something
this.
that I noticed a friend of mine doing is that she would change her language.
Yeah.
And basically because she was always thinking about her the angels on her shoulders and how they're writing down everything, and so she was like, oh yeah, I don't want to say this because that angel on my left shoulder is going to be busy. And I hadn't really thought about it because I feel like I used to be more aware of that when I was a child and being taught about that for the first time, but it kind of like faded into the back of my mind. But they're still there, and they're still writing down everything that I'm saying and doing, even the stuff that you don't say or do aloud. And so I feel like thinking about like that's the valid, not, I wouldn't say validation because they're kind of just recording, but thinking about them and like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything like that's more important.
I think it's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I think the biggest stress on this should be that you do have to get more in touch with your religion and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with your deen to get to
Definitely.
that point where you care about what's going to happen. Because I know like people are like, oh, like whatever, like so what if I'm doing that, and I feel like that
Yeah.
comes with a lot of different sins that we do commit. Like people are just like, oh, like whatever, like I already did it, who
Yeah.
cares, I'm going to keep doing it. But yeah, I think it is important to, before you do become self-aware, to get closer with your deen, and you will eventually like, I feel like you can fix that. That's something that you can avoid and refrain from.
Yeah. And I always advise, and when it comes to these kind of things, obviously in this podcast we're only speaking a certain amount of, like, there's only so much we're saying. A lot of it is obviously based on opinions and just us having a casual conversation. But a lot of things I feel like it's really important to read up about and educate ourselves on. I mean, when you're done listening to this, go ahead and look up like more, about Riyah and committing the shirk. And it's crazy, like when you're reading and you're again more aware of like what are the consequences consequences and what kind of comes from it. And just in general, like helping you, like maybe you still don't know if a lot of the things that you do, if you do have pure intentions or if you don't, just
Yeah.
reading a lot about it can be very like eye-opening, and it really does kind of help you figure out like your intentions and just how you want to
Like
play
your
with certain
thoughts,
things.
yeah, you're constantly thinking about it, like it will come up. So
Yeah, and
like
in
you
general,
said.
it makes you closer with your deen,
Yeah.
and that's all we could really hope for, right? But one thing that I just wanted to repeat is just having that deen over dunya mentality too. I think that's really
Yeah.
important, and remembering like again, this will only last for a certain amount of time.
It's very temporary.
Very exactly,
And
it's
it's just
very
a
very
cycle that
temporary.
needs to keep going. But
Yeah.
how long can it go for?
Exactly. There's only a certain amount of time that this will continue. You'll get this validation, but at the end of the day, literally at the end of
How
the day,
much is it gonna
there's-
matter? It's
Exactly.
not. It's really not gonna matter. And it's
Yeah.
okay to like be that, like I want to please people. Fine. Like yeah, to an extent, it's okay. Having like people, you wanting to do that for people is fine. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's kindness.
It's kindness,
Exactly.
yeah. But when it's a very thin line that you can't cross.
There's a cat under the table.
I don't know if
But
it
yeah,
wants to make
I
an
feel like that
appearance.
line when it's the kindness and then it's just you being
Yeah.
just doing wrong intentions or
Yeah.
impure
And
intentions.
just
And
think
that's
about-
why. Oh, sorry, Amina. Go ahead.
No, sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just think about this phrase. It's not even like a Muslim phrase. It's they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think about that a lot.
Aw.
I think about that a lot because you could be doing something really good, like outward, like people that give like the big amounts of charity on
Yeah.
camera or whatever. But if you don't have the right intentions, then that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Because it was done for all of the wrong reasons, and so your intentions can end up like canceling out something that
Yeah.
I don't want to say on paper, but outwardly looks like a really good thing.
In our book of
And-
deeds, yeah,
yeah.
it'll get canceled out.
Definitely.
And I think about that phrase a lot, because even though like I don't think it came from a Muslim mind. It's still like really relevant, especially because of how much they teach humility in Islam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's another thing I thought of.
Yeah.
That was really good. Yeah.
No, that was I mean that stuck with me too. So thank you for sharing that. But of course, with that being said, I hope this podcast was informative. I hope that you got something from it. And if you like this, please comment and like and share. And inshallah, we'll see you on the next one. Salam.
Assalamualaikum.